This is a crazy one we have here today. But I just wanted to start off by showing, I think you can see it, my calendar right here. This is a place where I most of the time put a lot of my dates, a lot of a lot of the places I expect to go, some appointments, anything that I may have, events on this calendar. And oftentimes we get so much in a hurry that we just think, if I write something on here, it's going to happen. And I've had a postcard or a note card right here for a while now that actually has Matthew 24 on it. And it reminds me of what we're going to be talking about in this chapter. It reminds me that no matter what I write on this calendar, it's not something I can expect, because we don't know when the end is going to be. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow, and it's just the reality of the situation. And I have been actually looking for a skull I could put on my desk, because I think there's importance in Christianity to just remembering, memento mori, remember you will die. If you remind yourself of that your time is short on this world, you'll remember, you'll have a greater purpose, you have a greater intensity to your mission. We've been called to share the gospel, and if we forget that there's going to be end, that we're running a race, then we're going to waste it. But as we get into it today, I'm not going to get all eschatological on you today, because I don't want to study the end times. That's not what this Bible reading plan is for. This is to draw out what we can, how we can change from this, where we see Christ in this. And as we start on Matthew 24, we see Jesus, he foretells the destruction of the temple in the first couple of verses. And this could be meaning his body as the temple in a few days is going to be destroyed. Or it can mean the literal temple in 70 AD was destroyed. It's a prophecy for either of those things, maybe both of those things. But we see, I would just like to, tell you, don't read into a lot of these prophecy things. Don't overread into a lot of these. A lot of people focus on, this is happening. Like when it says there's war and rumors of war, that's been happening forever. I'm not telling you to not think the time is near, because we are one day closer today than the history of Christianity has ever been. And the people said it was near 2,000 years ago. We know it is near today. So as we continue into this, Jesus is talking about the signs of the end age. And I like in verse 6, he's talking about all these terrible, kind of scary things that are going to happen. And he says, and you will hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. So he's telling us, the followers of Christ, the ones who are reading this, hey, don't be afraid. And that's the first thing I have written on my note card right here is don't be afraid. Because we have a God who knows what is going to happen. I'll skip ahead a little bit. In verse 36, he says, but concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. And I think at this point, the Son, Jesus, didn't know when the day was, in his earthly being, in his earthly body, that had not been revealed to him. But I think as Jesus coming in on the clouds, the one who is sitting at the right hand of the Father currently, I think he does know. He's in perfect union with God the Father. I think he does know now. But we worship a God who knows. We worship a God who knows far more than we could. We worship a God who is looking down, as in he knows, he sees all, he knows the future, he has a plan, and that's the one we can trust. We can trust a God who knows. And I just, as I continue, like I said, I want to remind you, Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6, I think a lot of us know it. It's trust in the Lord with all your might and lean not on your own understanding. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And we're not going to figure all this out, like I've said, but we trust God. In our limitations of understanding, we trust God, because you wouldn't want to worship a God that you understood fully, because then it might be a God that you have made yourself. And something that's encouraging in verse 14, we hear all of these things to happen. In verse 14, he says, and the gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So he's saying that the end will not come before the gospel is preached to every single nation. And that's the thing we strive to do as Christians, is to preach the gospel to every single nation. And as we continue, I have my second thing written on this note card here in verse 17. It says, let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. And Jesus is saying, when the end times come, when you see all these things happening, don't look back. And what we can use that today, see, I have don't look back right here, because what we can take from that today is you have been grafted as a son or daughter of the King, of God, and it's time for you to get to work. And if you're someone who kind of attends church, but you don't attempt to make new followers of Christ, to share the gospel, to, make your faith known, then Jesus is telling you, don't look back. If you have accepted this truth, if you have believed in the truth, then go after it. Once you start, you're on a race, and you will die one day, and you only have a short time, and you need to try to save as many people as you can by sharing the gospel with them. So today, if you don't even know at the time where you've ever shared the gospel, you need to start rethinking. Maybe it's time that you go and do that now. And as we move along, in verse 30, it says, then we're talking about the coming of the Son of Man now. He's coming, descending on a cloud. He says, then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes on the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And that's just the reality of Jesus coming back, explaining it. And Revelation shows us a little more of this. He has a sword coming out of his mouth and a tattoo on his leg. Oh no, and he has a engraving on his leg. He's just, his eyes are like fire. He is coming in his true form as the powerful Son of God. And I just want to share with you today, just think about this a little bit. If you knew Christ was coming tomorrow, would anything change? If you knew Christ was coming tomorrow, who would you go tell? What would you do? What would you change? And if you're thinking of that person, you would go tell right now, if you knew that Christ was coming tomorrow, then, I think you should go share that with him. I think you need to be thinking on that. Because if I'm being honest, the day before Christ comes, if he tells all of us, and we go out and say, like if he told me, if he came to me and said, I'm coming back tomorrow, go share my word, go do what you would do. I would go to the people maybe that I know that aren't saved, and I would say, please, God, Christ is coming tomorrow. You need to repent now. They would say, oh man, Brady, you've really gone over the edge this time. I think it's if we even knew that the day before, I think it would be too late. I think it would be such a emotional, for me, I would be so emotional telling people that it would be too late. So now is the best opportunity you have to share the gospel. And I just want to, I think might be some questions on verse 34. It says, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all of these things take place. And that verse out of context, you would see like, okay, the generation was past. The generation of Jesus is gone, and that did not take place. So is the Bible false? Well, there's a few explanations that are really good for this. And the one that, I see makes perfect sense is this generation he's talking about here is the future generation that he's been prophesying about this whole paragraph here. He's saying, he says, the end times will come. It'll look like this, this, and this. And this generation that is in the future, once the end times start, they themselves will see the Son of Man come. He's saying once the end times start, it'll be like that. Once the generation begins to see these things take place, it'll be like that. They will see the Son of Man coming sooner or later, but it will be in that generation. So that's something that can be taken out of context, but I believe that's a real true answer to that. And then he says in verse 36, but concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, not the Son, but the Father only. And we already talked about that the Son and the Father is the only one that knows, and we worship a God who knows. And then in verse 42, it says, therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. And that's my third point right here, is stay awake. I remind myself, don't be afraid. Don't look back. Stay awake. Stay awake. You don't know when he's coming. You don't want, when Christ comes down, you don't want him to find you sleeping. You don't want him to find you doing the things that are contrary to his will. So stay awake. Stay awake. And he says in verse 44, therefore you must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect. So I just ask you today, if Christ came today, would he find you asleep or awake? Would he find you doing things that are according to his will? Or would he find you doing things contrary to his will? Would he come down and see the people who are supposed to be the army of God, the people who are supposed to be challenging and pushing back the gates of hell? Would he find you asleep, off duty, not following the will of God? And today I just want to encourage you, you will die. You are running a race that is going to end in death on this earth. And I just, if you don't think about that much, if you try to push that out of your mind, just remember that is a very real reality. And as Christians, we need to be saying Maranatha, which means come, Lord Jesus, come. We expect you. We're excited to see all those promises fulfilled. We're excited to be in complete union with Jesus Christ. And I just want to tell you, when you wake up every morning, you might meet Jesus that day. So live like you might meet Christ that day. I thank you for joining me. I will see you tomorrow. Maybe.